Goodbye, goodbye, called the trailing arbutus family. It's getting a bit too late for us. We will be around next spring, though. Goodbye, goodbye, said the hepatica family. We will miss you, but we're going ourselves soon. We're glad to have seen you. How lovely and pink you were this year. And how lovely and blue you were, said the trailing arbutus flowers. Some of you were the most wonderful shades of lavender and purple and even pink and white. We like to have different colored frocks, they said. But then, fearing that they might hurt the feelings of the trailing arbutus family, they added, we wouldn't care about it, though, if we had the lovely pink dresses you have. Thank you, said the trailing arbutus family. We're very grateful to you. Well, goodbye, said the hepatica family. Goodbye, said the arbutus family. Next spring, added the hepatica family. Yes, next spring, said the arbutus family. And we'll come again, too, said the little wild violets. We're early spring flowers, you know. Of course you are, dear little violets, said the arbutus and hepatica families together. Next spring, then, little wild violets. Next spring, the violets whispered very softly. The soldiers who have fought for their country should indeed be remembered by placing on their graves the flag for which they fought. The flag for which they gave up everything, said Daddy, on Decoration Day. Not only is Decoration Day a memorial to the brave men who have lived and died for their country, but it should help to make us worthy of these men who gave their all, he ended. There was once a little boy named Fred, said Daddy. He was very fond of soldiers and bands. He had a great many little toy soldiers, and he would have the most wonderful drills with them. Last Memorial Day his grandfather, who had since died, had given him a little, old, ragged flag. But it was the Stars and Stripes, and Fred cherished it. His grandfather had fought in the Civil War and all through that war had carried the little flag. Now his grandfather was gone, and yesterday they had put a fresh flag on his grave. But Fred had the little flag that had been through the war. That night he was very tired, and he went to bed early. The cool white sheets and soft pillow were delightful to a very sleepy little boy, but soon he seemed to be sitting up on the pillow, and before him was the flag. I have come, said the little flag, because I thought you would like me to talk to you. Your grandfather went to the Civil War, as you know. He was so brave in the war, and, oh, I was so proud while I was with him all the time that it was for my sake he was fighting. It's the most wonderful thing in the world to be a flag even if you're in rags. Over a little balcony, said Daddy, where a lady used to sit and sew, there were several roofs adjoining and going off from different sides of the balcony, and there were eaves running along the balcony. In the spring a Mr. and Mrs. Robin looked about them for their home. How about this? Asked Mr. Robin. He was pointing to the eaves right over the little balcony. There is someone there, said Mrs. Robin, but she looks very nice and as though she wouldn't hurt a little bird for anything. I think it is perfectly safe. See, she is looking at us and her voice is low, and she is not frightening us. She is speaking to us. Listen to what she says. And they listened and heard the lady say, Dear little robins, have you come to call on me? Ah, her voice is so sweet and so nice, and she really seems to be glad to see us. Let us build our nest here. I think it will be a good idea, said Mr. Robin. So they built their nest under the eaves, right over the balcony where all day the lady sat, most of the time sewing, some of the time reading. She would have visitors there, too, and sometimes she would tell them of the robins who were so nearby, but she always saw that no one frightened the robins, and that they were well looked after. She used to put bread crumbs on the roof near the eaves. And a little pan of water was always there, too, for bathing or for drinking. Mr. and Mrs. Robin built a lovely big nest, and there Mrs. Robin laid the eggs. After a little while the baby robins came, poor little timid creatures, with scarcely any feathers at all. But Mr. and Mrs. Robin loved them and thought they were beautiful, just as boys and girls think their little baby brothers and sisters are beautiful, even if they have no hair on their heads. In fact, they like them that way, for then they look so appealing and so cunning and so helpless and yet so glad to be in the world. Usually Mother Robin guarded the nest, while Father Robin went off for food, for he was a very fine robin to go to market and pick out all the best things. He just knew so much about it all and was such a good business robin that he was a very fine provider. And, too, he knew that by helping Mrs. Robin he was sharing in everything, and he shared in doing what was to be done. It was not only fair to Mrs. Robin who would get all tired out alone, but it was also much more fun to help one's mate. So the little robins grew up happily and safely in their nest by the little balcony. I am going to tell you, said Daddy, about the mother hummingbird whose little ones were about to be attacked by a snake when they were rescued by some brave robins. The snake had come over from the vacant field and had crawled up the honeysuckle vine as the mother hummingbird had gone off for some food. Some robins hovering near had seen the snake. They had cried out in terror and had flown over to the nest. The mother hummingbird heard the cries and hurried back, but the robins had frightened off the snake. The snake was not a very large one, and really he had been frightened by all the noise the robins had made, and when he saw so many birds flying toward him he got away very quickly. The mother hummingbird got back just as the snake was leaving the nest. She couldn't thank the robins enough for flying to the rescue and saving her beloved little ones, but the robins didn't want any thanks. They were thankful, too, that the dear little birds had been saved, for birds are very loyal to one another and will risk any danger to save each other. You know, said one of the flowering almonds, I think a special vote of thanks should be given to the Persian lilacs. Every year they come out, and after they go their lovely bushes are still so pretty with their green leaves. But best of all is the visit they pay us every single spring. They are so small and dainty a lilac. Their color is such a soft shade of lavender. They are so beautiful and so flowery and so soft and sweet, and they are so very, very fragrant that we should tell them how much we love them and how glad we are each year to see them. It is only right to tell nice creatures and things that we like them. It would be quite unfair any other way at all, and so we should tell the Persian lilacs that we love them and that we welcome them and that we are looking forward to seeing them next year. We know how the people love them. We know that for years they have looked forward to seeing the Persian lilacs in the spring and enjoying them right through the spring, too. We know how, after the other lilacs have come out, the Persian lilacs bloom and then they last longer than the others, because they have come later. Ah, the Persian lilacs said, it is good of you all to be so kind to us. Our bushes are all very grateful. But you know we couldn't help but come out each spring. Beneath our bushes are beds of lilies of the valley, the sweet, fragrant lilies of the valley, that nestle in among their green leaves, and they always talk softly to us and send us their sweet greetings. Then the people are so fond of us. They love their Persian lilacs so, and all the flowers are so kind to us and help us add to the fragrance of the spring garden. There is no jealousy, and everyone is trying to add his sweetness to the whole. We will always come out, never fear. They ended. Illustration. The mother hummingbird hurried back. Page 129 One day Mother Raccoon was just about to start telling one of her stories, said Daddy, when Daddy Raccoon saw all the children around her. Now this afternoon, said Daddy Raccoon, I want to take all those silly little coons and show them how they can become brave big coons such as I am. And he thrust his tail this way and that with an air which said, I'm certainly one of the finest, bravest animals anyone could hope to be like. All the little coons looked very mournful when they heard that they were to be taken off to learn how to hunt in the swamp nearby. They were always very much frightened when they went near the swamp, for they had often heard the sound of a big gun, or had seen a dangerous man with a gun over his shoulder getting in behind the bushes. They began to wail and yell, but Daddy Raccoon was firm, and as he was the head of the house, or rather the big tree without any leaves, Mother Raccoon had to let them all go. But as they were following Daddy Raccoon, she called out to them, if anything happens to you, wish very hard that you will be all right and the Fairy Queen may possibly be nearby and will grant you the wish. Daddy Raccoon sniffed with scorn at such a remark, but he said that Mother Raccoon was such a sweet old dear she even thought well of the rabbit family, and so she was apt to think so much of the fairies in the same way. And off they all started. Some of the little coons were rather proud at going off to hunt in the swamp and really pretended they were tired of fairy stories and were glad that Daddy Raccoon had thought it was time for them to grow up. Soon they reached the swamp and in they went to hunt for food to last them many days, as Daddy Raccoon had said. They did just as they were told and were beginning to be very good hunters and were learning just how to pick out the best parts of the swamp, when suddenly, an awful bang was heard nearby. Oh, dear, shouted the little coons. Do be quiet, or they'll know where we are, said Daddy Raccoon. The second bang sounded very much nearer and they all trembled, when one little coon said, Oh, if any little fairy is hovering near, please tell the horrid man with the gun to go away. And, would you believe it, that man was heard to say, Well, I guess they're all away for the day and I won't try to catch raccoons until tomorrow. Then Daddy Raccoon took all the little ones back to the old tree where Mother Raccoon was sitting curled up, shaking with fear while waiting. Tell them all the stories you want to, said Daddy Raccoon, for one of your fairy friends saved all our lives and whispered to the man with the gun to go home. Mr. Mole was going to get married, said Daddy, and he wanted to build a fine home for the new Mrs. Mole. So he went forth into the nicest meadow he could find, and there, just at the end of it, near an old fence, Mr. Mole started to burrow into the ground. You know the moles live underground almost all of the time, and there make their homes. Just near the fence Mr. Mole began to dig and dig. First of all he made a long tunnel, a funny underground passage which he called the driveway of his home. Of course the callers of Mr. and Mrs. Mole could hardly drive along this tunnel, but they could run and scamper along, and they liked to call it by a big name like driveway. And after the long tunnel Mr. Mole started in to make a fine house out of the earth. He made lovely rooms, one for Mrs. Mole, one for himself, one for the little mole who was to do the cooking and housekeeping, and several guest rooms. For, as you can imagine, Mr. Mole was very fond of company. In addition to all this Mr. Mole built a very fine picture gallery, made in tiers of earth and mud, long rows and rows of it. On these he put pictures of his family which he made out of earth, too. Of course, Mr. Mole made every member of his family look just alike, but that didn't make any difference. The moles are not very fussy if their pictures aren't very well taken, for they can't bother to look at pictures much of the time. You see, their eyes are very small and they like to look at things more worthwhile, such as food and corn starting to grow in the ground and all the things the farmers plant. They love farms, you know, where wonderful vegetables are planted deep down in the earth. They are very apt to burrow along and make paths so they can walk to a farmland and have a feast. But I must tell you more about Mr. Mole's new home. The very last thing he did was to build a beautiful throne in the picture gallery for Mrs. Mole. At last it was time for her to come to her new home, and Mr. Mole had invited their friends and cousins, the mole crickets, to come, too. These cousins have very strangely shaped front legs with which they burrow homes just like the regular moles, and so they are considered relations. Here we all are, said Mrs. Mole, and she blinked her very small eyes, while all the other moles blinked their tiny eyes, too, and looked about them. Through the driveway they ran until they came to the house with all the beautiful rooms. The room Mr. Mole took them to last was the picture gallery, where Mrs. Mole sat on the throne in honor of her wedding day, and the little mole, who cooked, brought out some of the delicious stewed vegetables she had made for the wedding feast. You should have heard the moles as they looked at the pictures. They thought every picture was one of their own relatives. One mole would say, "Why, there's Mama," and another would say, "Why, no, that's not your Mama, that's my Papa." However, they didn't get in the least angry about the pictures. In fact, they thought it very clever of Mr. Mole to make pictures which looked like all their relations. At the same time, "But you haven't noticed my wedding dress," said Mrs. Mole. "I think my new home is scrumptious, which means beautiful, in case any of you little moles don't understand the word I've said in honor of the day. And now that you've all admired my home, please admire my dress." For the first time the moles noticed that Mrs. Mole had attached to her tiny ears little earrings made of mud with a red berry in each, and she wore a necklace to match. Her dress was of dull oak leaves which Mrs. Mole had saved for a whole year to wear on her wedding day. "You're a handsome mole," said Mr. Mole, "and I'm so proud you're to share this home I've made." And all the other moles grinned and ate more and more of the vegetable wedding feast to show what a good time they were having. "I think I will tell you about a very lucky little girl who once received a canoe from her big brother," said Daddy. This little girl loved the water. She had always lived near a lake, and she could swim and row. Now, this little girl had a great big brother who worked in an office in the big city. He had only a short holiday every year, just 2 weeks, but during those 2 weeks he would come home and teach her new strokes in swimming and new ways of diving, for he was very anxious that no one should be able to excel his sister as a swimmer. And secretly he longed to give his sister a canoe so she could go on the water just as much as she wanted to, and, as she was such a good swimmer, he felt it would be perfectly safe for her to own one. But, of course, a canoe is quite expensive, and the heads of offices in the big city do not consider that the big brothers may want to buy their little sisters canoes with the money they earn. Perhaps they think it is very silly to even dream of such things as canoes. But slowly during the winter the big brother had saved just as much money as a canoe would cost, and in June he wrote his sister a little note. In the note he said that he had a little present for her which he had put in the cellar, and that she would find it there if she went and looked. Now, the little girl could not for a moment imagine what kind of a present would be put in the cellar, but she hurried down to see, and there, right before her eyes, was a lovely big green canoe, just the very nicest shade of green, and there beside it were the 2 paddles. Well, she could hardly speak. She had never dreamed that she would own a canoe, or, anyway, not for years and years and years. On the canoe was printed, Indian girl, but she at once named it Papoose, which means, you know, a little Indian baby. You see, her big brother had arranged that the canoe should be taken down into the cellar when the little girl was asleep, so the surprise would be perfect. And it certainly was. In another week the big brother came up from the city, and they spent all their time in the green canoe on the lake. In the woods, said Daddy, there lived a mother rabbit and all her little children. They had a beautiful home, as nice as could be, in one of the finest briar patches ever known. Mother Rabbit was really extremely proud of her home and used to give many fine receptions there for the animals. Especially wonderful were her carrot receptions. The thing that worried Mother Rabbit most of all was that little Bunny Bonnie, her youngest son, was very, very curious. Of course, rabbits are always inclined to be curious, but Bunny Bonnie was even more so than most of his family. And he was sociable, entirely too sociable, his mother thought. He liked to go to every party that was given in the woods, even if the parties were not given by his friends. Now, one day a black fox moved to the woods to live. None of the animals were pleased to hear that he'd come to stay, for that meant they would have to think of getting out of his way, and doing as he said. Many of the animals left food at the entrance to his home so he wouldn't eat them up instead. Mr. Black Fox looked all about the neighborhood and he noticed Bunny Bonnie scampering around more than any of the others. So one day he spoke to him and this is what he said. I'm glad to see you're a brave rabbit, and that you're not afraid of me. Some of these other silly rabbits tremble when they see me and leave me good things to eat, but I know why they do that. They want me to get all through my meals at home, and not go looking near their homes for extra delicacies, such as their small children. But it's so absurd. They're abusing me, just because I'm black. It doesn't mean that I'm cruel and bad. In fact, I'm very kind and very good. Of course, Bunny Bonnie should have known that if Mr. Black Fox was so good he wouldn't have found it necessary to talk about it. But Bunny Bonnie never thought of that, and he forgot, completely forgot, that the Fox family is known to be very sly. And, continued Mr. Black Fox, I'd be greatly honored if you'd come to supper with me this evening. I'd be pleased to, said Bunny Bonnie. Now, Bunny Bonnie's mother was giving one of her receptions that afternoon, so she told the children to play in the little garden she had back of her home in the briar patch. And Bunny Bonnie left his little sisters and brothers to have supper with Mr. Black Fox. Mr. Black Fox was sitting outside his front door waiting for Bunny Bonnie. He was chuckling to himself, and his eyes looked very wicked and cruel. But when he saw Bunny Bonnie running up his pathway, he began to smile and called out in the pleasantest tone he could use. Hello, Bunny Bonnie. Hello, Mr. Black Fox. Here I am, and, oh, I'm so hungry, too. I didn't stop to get any of my mother's carrots as they were being fixed for her party, but came right along. I'm going to have something better than carrots for my supper. What? Said Bunny Bonnie in a cheery tone, for little did he suspect the old fox. I'm going to have you, you little stupid, roared Mr. Black Fox, but Bunny gave one bound and ran for the briar patch. He just reached there ahead of Mr. Black Fox, and never again did he leave his family for new friends.